For years, they stood motionless on the tarmac of geopolitics, the Eurofighter Typhoons, caught in a cold, metallic purgatory between Berlin's moral caution and Ankara's relentless hunger for air power. But now, the engines roar once more. In a quiet but thunderous shift in Europe's strategic landscape, Germany has approved the long-frozen export of Eurofighter Typhoon jets to Turkey, breaking a deadlock that had become emblematic of the strained, suspicious, often brittle relationship between the NATO allies. The news, confirmed by Turkish Minister of National Defense, Yazar Güler as early as November 2024, in an interview on TV 100, had hung in the air like a persistent, faint echo. But it was Germany's business daily, Handelsblatt, that drove it home with journalistic finality. The Typhoons, it appears, will fly, and not just as instruments of war, but as symbols of a tectonic policy shift in Berlin, and of a recalibration in how the West deals with its often wayward, indispensable partner. In the East. This is not merely a deal. It is a diplomatic thaw, a recalibrated compass in a world drifting ever further from order. For years, Germany's position on arms exports, especially to nations with spotty human rights records or controversial foreign policies, has been shackled by moral hesitations and political compromises. Under Angela Merkel's lengthy chancellorship and the subsequent ideologically fragmented traffic light coalition, the BUNDES-REPU-BLIK stance on military sales had hardened into caution, particularly when it came to Turkey. The reasons were manifold. Ankara's increasingly assertive, critics might say belligerent, posture in the Eastern Mediterranean, its military operations in Syria, its disputes with fellow NATO member Greece, and its democratic backsliding under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, all made for a dossier too troubling for Germany's post-war conscience to ignore. Add to that Berlin's deep-seated fears of being seen as an enabler to conflicts, and one finds the perfect storm of political inertia. The Typhoons, co-produced by Germany, the UK, Italy, and Spain, were collateral damage and a greater European unease about Turkey's strategic trajectory. But that was then. The arrival of Chancellor Friedrich Merz in the Chancellery has heralded not just a change in government, but a philosophical swerve. The leader of Germany's Christian Democratic Union, CDU, Merz has not only inherited the keys to Europe's largest economy, but has brought with him a more pragmatic, economically assertive, and geopolitically flexible vision of Germany's role in the world. Merz does not shy away from hard power. He sees the world not as it should be, but as it is, messy, brutal, and power-centric. Where Olaf Scholz once tread lightly, Merz seems willing to march. Under his stewardship, Germany appears ready to shed some of its self-imposed post-war moral armor. In an age of Russian revanchism, Chinese assertiveness, and Middle Eastern volatility, Berlin can no longer afford a naive pacifism, the new government argues. Defense exports, it seems, are no longer taboo. They are tools of influence, of leverage, of alliance maintenance. And Turkey, a NATO member of strategic gravity, sitting on the fulcrum of Europe and the Middle East, with control over the Bosphorus and an army second only to the US and NATO, could no longer be ignored. For Turkey, the approval is more than just a transaction. It's a geopolitical vindication. Ankara has long felt snubbed and second-guessed by its Western allies, particularly after its controversial purchase of the Russian-made S-400 air defense system in 2019. That deal effectively ended its participation in the US-led F-35 program, a painful blow to Turkey's ambition to field a fifth-generation air fleet. Since then, Ankara has scrambled to modernize its aging fleet of F-4 South and F-16s. It turned inward, accelerating development of its own fifth-generation stealth fighter, the KAN, and outward, courting alternative suppliers like the UK, Italy, and South Korea. But the Eurofighter Typhoon with its Mach 2 capabilities and multi-role versatility, remained a critical piece of Ankara's puzzle. Not just for its battlefield performance, but for what it represents: reintegration into Western defense systems, recognition, a nod of trust, however conditional, a strategic gamble or a calculated embrace. Yet this decision is not without cost or controversy. Critics of the move warn that Berlin is opening the floodgates to militarism cloaked in diplomacy. Human rights activists decry it as a betrayal of Germany's ethical export standards. Greek officials, too, have expressed thinly veiled discontent, fearful that a better-equipped Turkish air force could tilt the already tense aerial balance over the Aegean. But proponents argue this is no carte blanche for Ankara. Rather, it is a carefully calibrated move meant to retain Turkey within NATO's gravitational pull, particularly as Russia continues its aggression in Ukraine and China eyes Eurasia with increasing interest. It's realpolitik, says one Berlin-based defense analyst. If you push Turkey away, you risk losing a frontline NATO member to the embrace of autocracies. If you engage with conditions, you retain influence. Germany, in essence, is trading leverage for silence. A cynical view? Perhaps, but in international politics, silence, the kind that comes from cooperation rather than confrontation, can be golden, more than a machine of war. The Typhoon now becomes an instrument of diplomacy, not unlike the F-16 deal Turkey secured from the United States earlier this year. After ratifying Sweden's NATO membership, the choreography is delicate: carrots and sticks, jets and treaties, threats and promises. For Erdogan, the jets are a trophy. For Merz, they are a message that Germany will not be left behind in shaping Europe's defense landscape. And for NATO, the move is a reaffirmation that the alliance, however frayed, still has glue dot at its core. This is about more than Germany and Turkey. It is about the kind of world we are entering, one where principles are no longer absolute, where alliances are transactional, and where power is recalculated with every passing month. The Typhoons will fly, yes, but more importantly, so too might the idea that Europe can no longer afford to be naive. Turkey, emboldened. Germany, pragmatic. NATO, complicated. In the end, the Eurofighter might have found its most complicated battlefield yet, not above the clouds, but in the shifting storm of global politics. And in that storm, every wing that lifts is also a signal of where the winds are blowing.